What? Hey guys, this is Chris and my buddy Michael here.
Hmm.
Just to, I just wanted to put a little shout out at the beginning of the show here for a good friend of ours. Her name is Claire. Um, she was recently in the hospital, and I wanted to give her a nice little shout out, obviously, and because she's a teacher in the UK. And let's actually get some background music here for a second. Oh, wait, no, this probably won't work very well. Oh wait, no, that's the wrong one.
No,
No, okay. Oh no,
no.
no, probably not that. Wait. Oh, okay, no. Oh, here it is. Okay, yeah, she's from the UK. And Claire, I know you've had a little bit of an issue recently. She was in she's a teacher in the UK, like I said. She got in the middle of a little fight between some of the students, and you know she is very brave for doing so. She got hit in the process and was hospitalized afterwards for some bad times. So, all right, turn that off. But I really just wanted to give her a nice little plug here at the beginning. But yeah, she's a teacher like you, Michael, in the UK.
Yeah, I gotta say, when those kids are going for each other, it can be fucking scary. So
Yeah,
you're a braver man than I, Claire.
yeah, and yeah. I mean, it's just interesting trying to do that because you think, well, they're kids. How strong could they possibly be? But you know,
Those especially
you
the
could
older
be
ones, the
surprised.
15, 16-year-olds, they can
Yeah,
be big kids.
yeah. So honor and respect for you, Claire, for stepping in a time of need like that. Um, we hope you get a lot better soon. She's actually out of the hospital by now, and I'm really grateful. She seems to be doing a lot better. So keep the fight up, Claire, and we are here with you. And yeah, on with the show, as it were, though.
Enjoy.
The people united! We are going to send a message to the billionaire class. You can't have it all.
Ladies and gentlemen, another week is over, and we are still here. We are still alive, thankfully. War between the United States and North Korea hasn't broken out yet. It may still, but it hasn't happened yet, thankfully, guys. So I count that up as a win. My name is Chris Robinson. This is The Evolution of Now. I am joined by my two amazing co-hosts. See, I'm giving you guys some compliments.
Finally, some respect around here.
Some respect. That's it. That's all you're getting, though, Jordan. That's it. You're cut off. From
That's
now
your
on.
daily ration of respect.
And
Exactly.
I see my way out.
They're kicking me out. But anyway, I got my buddy Jordan here and Michael Peswick. How are you guys doing this
Heyo.
week?
You know those end of the world predictions? They're just looking more and more likely by the day.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, everything seems fine.
Well, I'm reassured because Trump said he's been speaking to the president of the U.S. Virgin Islands. I think it was today.
Right.
Of course, he is the president of the U.S. Virgin Islands, so
So, I mean, maybe
Maybe
he
a
was
little
talking
worried.
to himself, and he was actually being very serious about that. I don't know. He was like, "Look, I think we need to do something about these islands." And he was like, "Oh, that's a great idea, President."
look, President, I'm going to have to push you on this. We need to make a deal and we figure out how to do this Virgin Islands. Ooh, you drive a hard bargain, Mr. President. Well, yes, I do, sir. Ooh, you're a great negotiator, Mr. Trump. I know I am, Mr. Trump.
The best.
I like the scenario where Mike Pence is on the other end of the line and he's just making Trump happy. Where he's like, "You're doing a great job, Trump. You're doing a very good job."
Okay.
everyone over here thanks you for your service. Oh, thank you. You know,
Well, sources are telling us that he challenged Rex. Did you see this? He challenged Rex Tillerson to an IQ test face-off. And I so want it to happen live on TV.
I really would love that.
Rex Tillerson, I don't know if he's clever, I don't know if he's stupid or not,
I
but
guarantee
Trump
you
doing
he's
an
smarter.
IQ test live on TV. Yeah, but
he's smarter.
my cat, who keeps jumping into the washing basket, is probably smarter than Donald Trump.
can
Still,
HBO
I want to
pick
have
that up?
Trump do an IQ test live on TV. Get a celebrity presenter. The ratings will be enormous. I promise you, Mr. Trump. Just get on TV, do an IQ test live. It would be amazing to watch.
Come on, HBO, get on it.
Somebody needs to get on that. Yeah. The news this week has been not great in a lot of ways, and I think you said something about there's some new news around Theresa May happening these days, and you wanted to bring up as
very
just a little
quickly,
aside.
updates on Brexit and things. So the Tory party is unravelling as usual, has been for a while now.
Strong and stable.
Strong and stable leadership, guys. A government propped up by a bunch of Irish terrorists, and the governing party is unravelling at the seams because, the Tory backbenchers. Essentially, there's a contingent in the Tory party who wants a hard, no-deal Brexit. We just leave no deals at all, which economists reckon would lose us a third of our trade income, which is kind of bad. You're talking billions. And a fun one that came out in The Independent, a story. If we left the EU with no deal, we don't have any airspace agreements with other countries on our own yet. We have to negotiate this for ourselves, meaning we may not be able to have any commercial flights take off from the UK to go into other countries. So all commercial traffic would be grounded. If we left the EU tomorrow, it's possible all commercial air traffic would be grounded. And it's one of those things, I think, this will be sorted out. It's one of those, it's so disastrous, so outlandish. I think it will be sorted out, but it does speak to the sheer scale and incredible incompetence that is Brexit. It's just a massive shit show to the level where even the most basic services haven't been sorted out yet, that we need everything needs to be negotiated, and they're still down there with their hands down their pants.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds about right. Seems to be what's going on over there in UK land these days. But, yeah, I mean, we guys, we just had a episode last week on guns. This week is actually also going to be about guns, because there was so much that we never got to, that we really, really wanted to get to. And a big part of that was comparing and contrasting the United States more accurately with, the UK, for instance. And so we decided, you know what, let's actually just do that this week, instead of... We've been looking into doing a show on North Korea and that whole situation. Whew, man, that's going to be quite the interesting topic.
No one could have known North Korea's. I had a nice conversation with the Chinese president. He told me that it's so complicated.
No one would have seen that coming. Nobody. Nobody.
Yeah. No one could have known North Korea would be so complicated.
It's weird. But, yeah, we decided on the easier route, guns again. So, I mean, let's get into this, guys. Now, I know, Michael, you've been, researching a little bit on, UK laws. So, I would like to, start by, those, I guess, at this point. Just tell us a little bit about, some of the laws there.
Yeah, most of this is me talking to a friend of mine who's a gun dealer. But so for a start, in the UK, you need a permit to have a gun. And for a permit, you need a couple of things. You need a reason to have the gun. So you can't just have it for the sake of it. You need to state why you are having it. And you need to prove why you're having it. So if you're having a gun for sport, you need a form from the gun club you're shooting at, or the gun range. If you're having it for pest control, you'll need a pest control license, that kind of thing. If you want to keep it in your house, you need a safe, and the police will come and check the safe out and make sure it's legit and okay. Otherwise, you'll keep it at the gun club. Ammunition has to be kept at the gun club, I believe. I'm not sure it can be kept at home, or it can't be kept in the same place. One of the two is a bit ambiguous. You can't transport it, except to and fro the place you're going to use it. So yes, you can't just stick it in the back of your car or anything.
Like most rednecks in this country seem to do.
Yeah, and obviously there's a rather massive background check that you have to go through, with including referees and criminal record checks, that kind of stuff.
Interesting.
Did I miss anything?
I don't know.
Oh,
You're the expert here.
Handguns are completely banned. Handguns are completely banned.
No handguns at all, huh? That's interesting.
No handguns at all.
That is interesting.
Well, in terms of like home security, you would have to be able to carry some ammunition at the house, right? I would guess so, at least. Even just a little bit. Maybe it's like really, really limited on how much you can hold in the house, maybe, or something.
I suspect we're not supposed to use guns for home security, because no one has guns. So it's very, very, very unlikely you're going to get an armed invader into your house.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there might be some people that are paranoid of it, though. So
probably are, but that's not a reason to give them gun ammo, is it?
I don't know.
Yeah, I heard in the UK it's more the main concern is like or knife death, right? Or
knife crimes is a thing. Yeah. We touched on that last week. We've got problems with police training and police numbers, which is why crime is rising in the UK at the moment.
Weird.
It's almost as if you cut all the basic services, things get worse. Yeah. Who could have known?
Nobody. Again, nobody.
40-50% of the police funding, I believe, we've lost in real terms, which they call it efficiency saving.
Yeah.
You can't find 40% efficiency savings. It just doesn't work like that. You lose 40% of your funding and services are going to be cut. Don't get me started. I can go rant on about that for hours, which I probably have on this show over the time. Anyway,
we're great at ranting and raving. You know, we're big league like that. You know, right. But I guess to compare the UK to the United States. Jordan, did you have some figures on some gun legislation here? Like, I know there's one thing that in 36 states there are no legal requirements for either gun registration, permits, or even a license to purchase and own firearms, right?
Yes and no. So let's just say the article, which I'm citing from the Huffington Post, points out the 36 easiest states to purchase a gun. And so...
Well, in this article, though, here, it does say, in 36 states, there are no legal requirements for gun registration, no permit needed, and no license necessary to purchase and own a firearm such as a rifle, shotgun, or handgun. That's right in the article here, so yeah.
Right.
That's crazy.
I mean, because there's they kind of go down by state, by each state, and actually, because I read it, and for license, registration, or permit required to buy a gun, that's an option that you can either put yes or no, and just looking at it really quickly right now, and I'm realizing every single one of them has no for that option there. Yeah. So to buy a gun, it doesn't require you to have your license, registration, or permit on your person. But interestingly enough, doing a little bit more digging, there is actually background checks are ran every time you do purchase a gun, but it's a lot more complicated than that. And
it actually depends on where you buy it, though, right?
Right. So say if you buy it online, it would be shipped to a federally licensed firearms dealer, and so from there, you would fill out the paperwork, 16 questions, and a background check will be ran in terms of your criminal history, your mental history, and incarceration history. And so yeah, and typically you're supposed to, about 90% of those applicants receive a verdict instantly right there, because it's all done either through the telephone or online. And but the other, say 10%, they either if it doesn't get approved right away, they have about 3 days. The FBI looks it over for about 3 days, and they have this weird system in place where if called default purchase, which means that if the
default proceed, yes.
My thanks. If the FBI does not give a verdict within the 3 days, the gun seller can sell you that gun, or can give you the gun that you purchased, because you've already bought it online. It's just the background check portion that you have to pass. But of course, if they don't give a verdict within those 3 days, the gun dealer is within their rights to just give it to you, which has actually happened in, I believe it was in, the Charlottesville, no, not Charlottesville, excuse me. Charleston. It was the church shooting, Charleston, thank you, Charleston in Carolina, where, Ruth, the killer, actually didn't get approved for this. And apparently it went over 3 days, and what happened was he was just given the gun. I mean, because, that default period has passed. And of course, with that same gun, he murdered dozens of innocent people.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very messy. Just how the system is here.
Yeah, it's super interesting. They do have a little snippet on that particular case in here that is super important. And I'll read the whole thing here. It goes by basically what you just said, but like from the article itself here. There's different areas of it. There's different subheadings here. This heading in here is what happens when a background check does not clear right away. It says, when a check requires more information, the FBI has 3 business days to make a final determination on the buyer. If a decision can't be made in that time frame, the FFL is allowed to, by law, the FFL is the federally licensed firearms dealer, is allowed by law to go ahead and sell the firearm in a sale commonly referred to as a default proceed.
So the FBI decides, or maybe not decides, but maybe it just gets stuck, but for some reason the FBI decides, okay, we're going to take a moment to take an extra look into this person. That guarantees them to get the gun.
Yeah. Pretty much. I mean, okay. I guess it's up to the discretion of the firearms dealer. They might decide we're going to wait for the FBI to complete their background check, or if they want to make money, they might be like, fuck it, let's just go. You know, they don't care.
Well, if
also
background checks are a weird one, because over here, I don't know how they are there, but if they take very short period of time, then worry, because they found something immediately. If they take a medium period of time, you're okay, because they're just checking everything and they find nothing, so it takes a while. If it takes a very, very long time, that means they found something serious and are really digging into it.
Yeah, potentially.
So if it takes more than 3 days, that means either it's just bureaucracy and, it happens, or they found something they want to check out.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to go back to this real quick because there's a very important line right here, right after where I finished off last. The dealer is also not required to notify the FBI when a sale has been made after that 3-day delay.
Right.
So, I guess if the background check goes through right away, then the FBI is notified whether the purchase is made. But if it does go past that 3-day delay, then the dealer doesn't even have to tell the FBI that gun was sold. And this means, like, when the background check comes back as, like, yeah, this person shouldn't have bought the gun, or shouldn't buy a gun, the FBI doesn't know whether the guy has bought the gun or not at that point. So that is quite worrying.
That's concerning.
A little bit. But going into the Dylan Roof thing, though, it actually has a little paragraph here on Dylan Roof, too. Default proceeds sales can have public safety implications. In April of 2015, Dylan Roof legally purchased a Glock handgun in such a transaction after a cascade of clerical errors delayed his background check. Roof was disqualified from gun ownership due to a drug charge. 2 months later, he used the weapon he bought that day, legally bought that day, to murder 9 parishioners at the Charleston, South Carolina church. So, it's interesting how gun owners and everything, and the NRA especially, are always like, well, the bad guys, they're not going to buy their guns legally if they're going to commit a crime. This guy did. He bought his gun legally. He went to a legal federal firearms dealer and bought his gun. So, right. I mean, if we have stricter regulations in place, then this guy, Dylan Roof, wouldn't have been able to get that gun, potentially.
And the background check is there, it's just not very sensible. You know? Like,
yeah, it seems like one of those cases where you've got a law that could be useful, and maybe it catches some people, but really that needs to be improved on the implementation.
Yeah.
Right. Like, all the components seem to be there. It has to just stick to it. You know what I mean? There can't be any backdoor way in order to subvert or circumvent, the background check.
Yeah. Now, I mean, there's obvious other ways that people can go and buy guns without a background check, and those are typically private selling. If you own a gun and you sell it to someone, I do believe in most states you don't need a background check in that case. You know, they're not going to expect the normal citizen to do that, I guess. Right. And there's also what is famously a gun show loophole, where these federally authorized firearms dealers can go to these gun shows and then sell the guns there without needing background checks in some states. So that's one way that these dealers can get around it. They could just go to a dealer or one of these gun shows and then just sell them without needing background checks anymore.
So that's what the gun show loophole is?
Pretty much, yeah. So, yeah. And that was one thing that the Obama administration at least was trying to deal with, but obviously since the Republicans are now the majority there and were in his last few years as president, wasn't done.
It's like having a castle, but then just opening the door. If you've got a loophole that wide, there's barely any point having it. It's
like barbarians are at the gates, and you don't want them to come in, so you throw the gates open.
Yeah.
I dare you to come in. And when they come in, you're like, wait a minute. I don't know. But anyway. It's amazing. Now, right after that part of the article, it does go into, say my background check is denied after that 3-day period, then what happens to the gun I just bought? When a background check runs past the 3 business day deadline, the NICS, I forget what it stands for, let's see, National Instant Criminal Background Check System, where is it again? NICS examiner tasked with the case will still attempt to make the final determination on the purchaser, and has up to 90 days to reach a conclusion. If the FBI determines that the buyer was prohibited, the agency sends out a retrieval order to the ATF, which is the Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives task force, I believe, inside of the FBI. And the ATF is then responsible for getting the gun back. So they will put out they'll put people into the field, I guess, to go to the person's house or something, I guess, and kindly ask for the gun back, I guess, or something. Retrieval orders are relatively rare, though. NICS Operations Report from 2000 noted that more than 45,000 default proceeds issued that year, approximately 5,000 resulted in retrieval orders. So, yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, not all the time do they find something after that 3-day mark that's actually, like, distressing and worrying. But 5,000 of those times
now and then they will.
were. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that is something to be thinking about. Yeah, it is pretty crazy, guys. I mean,
it is.
This is the United States for you, unfortunately.
But like, so in light of all that information, like, what do you believe can be done in order to better regulate or just have better oversight on gun ownership and such? So like, do you have any suggestions in terms of that?
Would you like to start us out, Michael? Just so you know.
I'd extend that to a week for a start, or just whenever the background check comes through, and say it should be about 3 days, might be longer. Or maybe have the ability to, if it doesn't come back in 3 days, the FFL, I think it was, can contact the thing and request a check to make sure it's actually gone through. It's not not been delayed or whatever.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Maybe like even just like a question to the government at that point. Is it allowable for me to sell this gun at this point then, since it's taking so long or something?
Yeah.
Just a check on it, I guess.
I mean, I'm in favour of waiting periods anyway, because...
Absolutely, me too, honestly.
Because you get mad, you go buy a gun, you shoot someone. If there's a waiting period, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think 3 days is enough. I'd have to put at least a week, because a person can get mad for a long time, and something bad happens and you get mad. You can keep that gun for 3 days. After a week, hopefully, you'll have cooled down a bit, or whatever it was has been resolved, or whatever misunderstanding has happened has been, dealt with. I do like the waiting periods.
I would probably push for a month, personally, at least. But, it's just me.
Yeah, being realistic, though, I think a week could happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, kinda.
Probably more realistic, I guess, but,
There's actually another bit where it just shows how the information that the FBI is uses in order to determine if someone can have a gun or not, or buy one or not, is insufficient, and it's based on how much a state wants to participate. So for instance, I have a bit here that says, quote, records reporting to NICS, which is the National Crime Information Center, which is one of 3 of the databases the FBI consults when trying to figure out someone's viability. By state and local agencies is notoriously spotty. According to a Bureau of Justice Statistics report published in February, at the end of 2014, there were 7.8 million active warrant records in state warrant databases, but only about 2.1 million such records in the National Crime Information Center database. So that's like millions of unreported active warrant records to the NCIC, which is like a real problem, because it just shows that they're lagging behind in terms of the information within their database.
That's also very interesting. I do believe they also check local and state databases as well, but those could also not be completely accurate either, So, I mean, it's tough, to say the very least about it. Yeah, I mean...
It's like nothing's mandatory. Everything seems to be just like an option. And the problem with that is when it comes to very serious topics such as guns, you have to kind of be a little bit harder when it comes to that.
Yeah, and you get problems like in Chicago where it's a fairly tight gun control area surrounded by less than tight gun control areas, or at least there's one nearby, I believe.
Yeah.
So people can drive 20 minutes, pick up a really easy gun, and drive into the city again. So the gun control there is effectively worthless because the place down the road doesn't have it.
Yeah. And to talk about the New Jersey, actually, for a second, New Jersey is one of the most strict states on gun control. And that's a great thing. However,
which is, of course, where you two live.
Yeah. We live in New Jersey, me and Jordan, yes.
Yeah, just wanted to make that clear for the audience.
Yeah, they know this. They know. Well, they probably not. But I don't know. But anyway, New Jersey, very, very strict. However, you can go over a bridge to Delaware, and they are 5th on this list of easiest states to buy a gun. They are the 5th easiest state to buy a gun in. And they are right over a bridge from us, Delaware is. So, yeah, to your point right there, I mean, it does stand to reason that, like, maybe people can then just go to Delaware, buy it legally there, and then come back to New Jersey and use it in a crime. Even though we have some of the strictest gun laws in the country. And that's worrying. Now, there's another part where in this, the easiest states to buy a gun is a Huffington Post article that you mentioned, Jordan. I wanted to read this one paragraph here. It's a little interesting. It shows a contrasting between New Jersey and some of these states. In states where weapons can be purchased with relative ease, there are also far more venues for buying guns. Nationwide, for every 1,000 businesses, there are about 19 that are licensed to sell guns. So basically, out of every 1,000 businesses in 30 of those 36 states, they have more than 19 businesses that can sell firearms legally. In Alaska, there are nearly 50 gun shops for every 1,000 businesses. The most of any state.
0.5% of every business is a gun shop.
Yeah. That's pretty crazy.
So insane.
It is Alaska, though, we're talking about. But there's a lot of bears.
Is there 1,000 businesses in Alaska?
That's a good point. I'm not sure. It probably is, let's be honest. But it's not that small. But,
I mean, my picture of Alaska is just this snowy wasteland, so I don't know.
But by contrast, it goes forward in here. By contrast, in New Jersey, which has relatively strict gun laws, there are fewer than 3 firearm licensees per 1,000 businesses. So, we're not doing too shabby on that count. We have less than 3 firearm licensees per 1,000 businesses. So I'd say New Jersey is kind of winning on that, you know?
Well, there also happens to be just a handful of states where a permit isn't even required to carry a handgun on you. So, and that does include Alaska. It includes Vermont. It includes Wyoming, and yeah. So it's like, sure, the process of actually buying one is simplistic, but the fact that you don't need any identification on you to walk when it's on your person is another problem within itself. And it's sort of like, why are those laws in place? And why are they in place? Like, why aren't the regulations in place for that? You know what I mean? Like, what's stopping Alaska from implementing a regulation that says, yes, you do in fact need this, you need a permit. Just, it's just sensible I don't know. It just blows my mind how the things are there. Like, all of the regulation that we need and to really tighten and make things more transparent are there. It's just they're not being enforced, and that just really gets to me. And I actually didn't know that before diving into this research. To me, beforehand, it just seemed as though these things didn't exist. Like, we didn't have even the options for these things. But it turns out they're there. It's just, it's
just not being enforced. Yeah,
right. It's based on the state.
Yeah,
there is one position of gun advocates I do sort of agree with, and that's in some areas, not necessarily states, but areas, the gun laws have to be different to others. So in a very urban area, you don't really need a gun for anything, except for work and maybe sport. If you live in a very rural area, you might need it for like pest control and that kind of thing.
Yeah. Like, going to Alaska real quick, though. Like, Alaska is one of those more rural-ish areas where it's, there's not that many people that live in Alaska. So for that point on itself, I can understand them not needing permits to carry guns and everything.
Well, I'm sure we can work out some system.
Yeah.
Where we can devise a system which is fair to the people in rural areas who do need the guns, but also protects the people in urban areas who are suffering from mass shootings.
Yeah. But, like, in Alaska, though, there hasn't been too many mass shootings in Alaska that I've heard of, at least, thankfully. But with Alaska, I would say a lot of it probably is because they're protecting themselves and their property from bears and wolves. Because, like, those things do live in that area. And it's one of the more untouched landscapes in America. In Alaska, I would assume, just solely because it's all the way up there. It's really cold, and there's not really that many opportunities to expand population up there because people don't really want to stay there. Typically, I would assume, because it's so cold, and it's just not a very densely populated area. So, these weapons are going to be more important there than, say, New York or New Jersey.
There's the issue of, like, the police can be half an hour away in some of these places.
That's true too, yeah.
You kind of have to defend yourself. And in Wyoming, I think the population density was like one person for every 4 square kilometers. Jeez. You're probably not going to run into anyone to shoot. Never mind needing laws around it.
That's probably untrue because most people, even in those states, live in towns and cities.
Yeah.
So you're going to be,
you know what I mean? It's not like an urban area where you're surrounded by thousands of people constantly, and you get big events with hundreds and hundreds of people. Most things are quite local.
Sparse. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But
I mean, while on the topic of Alaska, I would like to say though, in terms of gun ownership versus gun deaths, Alaska is only third behind Montana and Wyoming in terms of the most gun deaths, versus gun ownership. So it is there, and I'm looking at this graph here, and in those 36 states, where it's easier to buy a gun and to have one on you, happen to be at the very top of this graph in terms of gun deaths by gun ownership. So,
which ones did you say? There was Alaska, Wyoming. Did you say? And
it was number one actually happens to be Wyoming, and before that is
Alabama, and then Montana and Alaska. Interesting. Now, just to go into this one thing that easiest states to buy a gun thing. Actually, Wyoming is 36th on the list, so it's actually one of the most strict states, I guess, in terms of being able to buy a gun. So they are in that top. But number one
in the list
is Alabama. Yeah.
Right, but that's only in when you're comparing the 36 easiest states to purchase a gun. Wyoming
it still is 36 of the states. That's a lot of states.
That's that is very true. That is true.
But Alabama's number 1, Alaska number 2, number 3, Arkansas, 4, Colorado, number 5, Delaware, like I said, number 6, Florida, interestingly, and it goes on from there. They actually list out all 36 of the states in here. It's interesting. So,
wow,
yeah,
it's.
What can we say?
Yeah, it's really this is really tough, and it's going to require some real analytics and people who are very aware and educated on this to come together and really come up with sensible gun regulation, because there's so many different variables, and we can't even just it is difficult to even just chalk it up on gun regulations. It also could be just the sheer amount of guns within a certain state, or and especially when comparing that once again to what happened in Australia, which is when it was less guns on the street, obviously, and it would make sense that there would be less gun-related homicides and less gun-related suicides. So, I mean, there's so many things at play, and it's really, I'm like, just my brain is in a pretzel because of all the factors that take place.
And this is one of those where I suspect the incremental approach might be the best option, because the scale of the problem seems to be so huge. We've got, I think it was more guns than people, wasn't it? Or the same amount of guns as people in America, which is
actually
just massive amounts of guns. But
yeah,
you might actually just need an incremental problem. It's one of those that isn't going to be solved overnight. It's going to have to be a slow, kind of gets better over time kind of thing.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to read this one little piece also from that easiest states to buy a gun thing. Only a few million privately owned guns in the United States are registered with the federal government. The actual number of guns, however, is certainly far, far higher. Last year alone, the U.S. gun makers manufactured more than 10 million firearms. And according to a 2012 estimate from the Congressional Research Service, there are as many as 310 million guns across the nation. So our population, this article was published in 2016, May of 2016. So they're talking about last year alone was 2015. But our population here in America is about 330-something, I think, million people. And back in 2012, there was 310 million guns. So, yeah, that's basically a gun for every person in the United States, just about.
Right.
You don't have healthcare for every person. You've got guns.
Nope.
Right.
We have enough guns for everyone, at least, yeah, but there's actually not that many people. If you look at the number, I think I remember seeing earlier that only like 30-something percent or 40-something percent of Americans actually own guns, or at least are ones that admit to owning a gun. Maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's something like where you've got relatively few people who own lots of guns.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's this look like? Yeah.
I think I did see something that was like half of all guns are owned by like 4% of all of the people that own guns
just
in
people
this
who collect
country. Yeah,
dozens of guns on their own. It's weird. I mean, I kind of get it if you're a collector, if that's your thing, but still, it's a bit strange.
It's a bit crazy. But
Oh man, I really, I'm so disheartened because I really thought, through all this research, I'd finally get to a point where I would finally see the approach that's needed to be taken to tamp on, to put an end to this problem we have. But it's, oh man, it's
problem.
just,
it's kind of where I got to, because that's why I say I think it's going to have to be a long-term incremental change where you slowly reduce the level of guns to a more reasonable, manageable level. You enact stronger gun controls over a long period of time. You don't even have to ban guns or even make it impossible for people to own guns. You just want to make it more sensible. You just want to bring things back to more sensibility, to a place where you have a manageable and known amounts of guns, and you have you have some limits on who can have the guns based on criminal record and things, rather than this current system, which is just a clusterfuck.
Yeah, a little bit of a clusterfuck.
But it could take decades to manage that.
Yeah, I mean, these problems are going to persist for a while, unfortunately.
And can I just say one thing
problem.
too? And one thing that we didn't necessarily get a chance to go over, which is how other issues could increase the person's behavior, violent behavior. So, and of course that goes into economics and overall mental and physical health and just overall and also just life expectancy. It's just like everything can be put in play when it comes to this trend that we've been seeing for decades in the US. Everything's interrelated, and it's just a matter of figuring out how everything is connected in a sense.
Yeah, there's that crime tends to rise with other certain things, and there's always this weird case of, for example, crime tends to fall when education goes up. Or is it that education goes up when crime tends to fall? Establishing which way around that goes, or both, can be tricky. Or is it some third variable? As education goes up, people tend to be richer. So is that why crime goes down? Or are they richer because crime goes down and therefore education rises? There's all these interdependent factors, and we have no good way of knowing which way around or both ways or third variables or whatever is causing all this. What we do know, though, is if you cut one area, like education, everything else falls with it. Like you were saying, so sometimes tackling a problem like crime, you don't necessarily doing things like better policing and legislating is important, but also tackling things like economic problems and teenage pregnancy and education can be as important as dealing with the crime itself.
Yeah, makes sense. Very, very interesting points. Now, I wanted to get back to some other things, though, that we sort of touched on last episode, but I wanted to re-emphasize a little bit here. Now, we talked about a piece of legislation in what is called the Sportsman Heritage something Act, which is abbreviated the SHARE Act. There is a new piece that was added to this that they wanted to vote on to add to this act. They were calling the Hearing Protection Act. And it was basically an act in it that was going to make it easier to buy, sell, and own silencers and suppressors for firearms. Now, I actually found an interesting clip from a gun enthusiast that actually explains a little bit of his perspective on suppressors, and especially in terms of the AR-15. Now, I'm going to play a clip here from the guy talking about it, It starts out, you can hear some shots from this AR-15, which are suppressed. So they do have some sound to them still. So let's play that real quick here, and let's talk about that next.
Some of the more astute of you may have noticed that I'm currently wearing earplugs while using a sound suppressor. Which seems kind of strange, right? I mean, one of the biggest reasons to buy a sound suppressor is so you don't need these damn things. And so you're not at the range going, what? Huh? How many yards was that? How many MOAs? That's infuriating, especially if you have electronic ones that amplify, and the guy next to you, has standard plugs. He's screaming at you, and you can hear it clear as day. Well, contrary to popular belief, 223 out of any sort of suppressor is very loud. It's very loud. So, I mean, at least if it's standard, mil spec, 62 or 55 grain ammunition, it's supersonic. It's faster than the speed of sound. So you're going to hear that sonic boom, that crack, no matter how awesome your sound suppressor is.
So that's interesting to think about. That, yeah, even with a suppressor, even like those AR-15s will not be completely silenced at all, and they'll still actually be pretty loud. But, I mean, it still doesn't take away from the fact that had the shooter in Las Vegas, who was in a hotel, I think in one of the top or upper floors of the hotel, like, easily hundreds of yards, hundreds and hundreds of meters away from the people he was shooting at in a concert. Had he had suppressors on those weapons, you would have probably heard that sonic boom and that crack, but it would have been a lot harder to hear, like, during a loud concert. Because if you guys have ever been to any concert, concerts are loud.
Oh, yeah.
They are really, really loud. So it's not easy to hear anything over that. And even if you go back and watch the footage online of what happened, it takes actually the band and everyone in the crowd a few seconds before they actually realize that there's actually these gunshots going off. So, I mean,
yeah, it reduces reaction times and gives the shooter more time to do his thing without anyone responding to it.
Yeah. Which, like, that guy could have possibly shot a hell of a lot more people without the band even stopping playing, because they may not have even heard anything. Right. It's still loud, but you got to put into perspective on the area you're in. A lot of those suppressors, they're loud when you're really close to them, but when you get farther away, sound disperses over distance. And so, the quieter it is, the less range that noise is going to be heard from. So it's important to think about, at least.
It is. And they're saying, their claim or argument is that having making suppressors more widely available or accessible will reduce, the hearing loss of hunters and their companions. And the problem with all of this is that these lawmakers or these people in Congress or people just, they're able to make a claim without having any data to back it up. And they can just say whatever they want unverified and it'll go to a vote. And that's a problem. I mean, if
you shoot enough weapons, without earplugs and stuff, you're probably going to have some hearing loss. Almost undoubtedly, because they are really, really loud, to be fair, on that point.
Right. Except it's like, why not go with tradition and use the muffs like every hunter's been using since I don't know how long?
Well, I mean,
it's just...
Yeah. Like that guy saying, though, but it's so frustrating and annoying to have to scream, like, huh? What? I can't hear you! And it's like... I mean, I get it in some ways, but, like, I'd rather you guys be a little bit inconvenienced with this than to allow firearms to get even deadlier than they already are. You know?
Right.
And they are putting their personal comfort ahead of, like, national security even, you know? Like, because guns at this point seem to be a national security issue. Because you can go anywhere now that's, like, super highly densely populated, and you can be at risk of being shot and killed by some crazy person that wants to kill as many people as they can. So, I wouldn't at all, like, really give anyone any kind of, like, crap for, like, saying, you know what, I could have went to a concert, but then I realized, you know what, what's the risk worth, you know? Like, I don't think that risk is worth it. And I can't blame someone that would think that at this point, because of the frequency of all these mass shootings happening. You know? It just takes away our ability to live our lives freely and openly, you know, in some ways. Like, people just can't even go to the movie theater without being worried that someone might come in with a gun. Yeah, it's messed up.
It's crippling the national spirit. I mean, yeah, I know people personally who are terrified to go into public spaces, such as the movie theater, because of just these past shootings. And, you know, it's just like, man, I don't know how long this problem needs to persist before anything gets done here. And something that needs to be realized is that you can't make everyone happy, you know, especially when it comes to, like you said, this is an issue of national security. So there are going to be some drastic measures that have to be taken that everyone will not be satisfied with, but it will be in the national interest of people's lives, you know? And I think that's really at play now. We have two sides here, and there is a possibility in order to you can make both sides satisfied. But the problem is it's a huge disparity between people who are feeling unsafe and people who are, you know, wanting these things as deregulated as possible. And
have you ever heard of there's an idea in design, and it's not got a formal name, but I've always called it the coffee effect, where...
Not the covfefe effect?
No, not the covfefe. Essentially, if you ask people, what type of coffee do you want? Do you like, you know, if you're a coffee company, you ask them, what type of coffee do you like? They'll say, oh, I like a rich, dark coffee. But when you look at what they actually buy, they tend to buy a milky. Oh. They tend to buy a milky white coffee. So they'll say they want one thing, and when they actually get it, they want a different thing. And it applies to lots of things where when you're designing anything from, clothes, whatever.
I can see that
coffee.
as some level of like laws. Compensation, maybe.
All laws, yeah. It's to do with social biases, and people think they're more refined because they want a better coffee. In this case, I think there's something similar going on in a lot of cases where people say, well, what do you want from laws? Oh, I want to keep all of my guns and I want to deregulation, all this. They don't actually want that. They just think, on some subconscious level, a lot of people think that's what they're supposed to say. Even if you ask them on an anonymous survey, you still get this effect. Where what they actually want is reductions in gun crime. They've just been told that that's how they get it.
Yeah.
Right.
Whereas if you legislate a gun control law, just push it through however you can, and then it reduces gun crime, they'll all sort of say, well, it worked.
Yeah.
Kind of like Obamacare. At first it was quite unpopular. Obama pushed it through. And now they can't get rid of it because it's really popular.
They're trying their damnedest. I don't know. Did we mention that Donald Trump actually signed a thing to actually strip Obamacare of any of the subsidies that were going to some of the insurance companies to incentivize them to cover the low income people on healthcare?
Because he signed that executive order yesterday. So no, we didn't get a chance to cover that.
So that just happened as well. I wasn't sure if we mentioned it at the top of the show, and I couldn't remember.
Oh no.
Everything's a blur these days.
It is. I mean, everything's a cluster. Everything seems so unstable, and it is. And you think about what issues should be what issues most paramount. And then, of course, me personally, it's climate change, but in terms of I guess exclusively domestic issues at hand. Of course, guns go right at the top of that list, or amongst them. And so I don't, Chris, man, I really don't know. I just say we'll definitely have to keep the audience informed on that one bill that they're trying to pass on the suppressors, because that's really important. And of course, and keep them updated on what's going on with bump stocks, because apparently there are some, over the course of the week or since our last podcast, there's been multiple officials that revealed their plan in terms of regulating bump stocks. And the NRA came out against just about every single one of them, saying they're not satisfied with what they have, or what they have. So that's even still an issue. And let's be real. I truly believe that this whole issue in terms of the bump stocks, that'll just get swept up right under the rug. I don't truly believe anything's going to happen with it, because we're already done talking about it. It's no longer even a topic of conversation.
Yeah, we were talking before the show about the silence has been a red herring, in that they're going to say, oh, well, we stopped. We want to deregulate silencers, and now we're not deregulating silencers. Oh, guys, I guess you win. Even though nothing's actually happened. We're still back at square one. But,
Yeah.
I reckon that's what the silencers thing's all about, on some level.
Perhaps. Now, I guess last thing that I really wanted to go over was something that we actually also talked about earlier before the show that I thought was extremely fascinating. And that is gun culture, comparative to here in the United States to, let's say, Japan. We were talking about it, how it's really interesting. If you look at the gaming market, just like games that come out of the United States that are first person tend to be first person shooters, which are, like your Call of Duties, your Battlefield, your PlayerUnknown's Battleground games and stuff, where what those games are is, these characters, these unnamed characters, unfaced characters, you don't know anything about the character, you're just a guy with a gun. And this is American games in particular seem to have a more approach to these types of situations, like of empowering the gun more than they do the person. In some ways.
The gun. We were talking about it. The inspiration of this came from an Extra Credits show, which is a gaming show on YouTube. I highly recommend. But they were talking about how the games in the US and Japan differ in how they approach weapons. Because in the US, you get first-person shooters where a gun is a tool which you the character picks up, and the tool empowers you to do what you do. Everything you do is done through your weapon. And if you want to advance and get more powerful, you get a different weapon. So there's nothing special about it. You discard it when you get a new one.
I don't know about you, but that BFG, so good.
Yeah, and you get a bigger gun if you want to get stronger. You get a bigger gun, or you put armor on, things like this. Yeah. You external tools which make you stronger. Whereas in Japanese games, which of course grew out of Buddhism and such, and the very spiritual warrior culture of samurai and things. Forgive me, I'm not completely historically accurate there, but you get the idea. It grew out of this sort of spiritual warrior idea.
Yeah. I guess shinobi would be more ninja, right? Shinobi,
yeah, I think so.
And samurai.
I think so.
I can't remember what. I don't think they were based solely on Buddhism.
I don't know
the Japanese, but yeah,
they had the gun for them is a part of the character, and it's not the gun empowering the character. It's the character who empowers their weapon. And when you want to upgrade your character, you upgrade the person, not the gun. You upgrade the person upgrades the gun. So the gun essentially draws from the internal strength of the character, like Mega Man. Or Dragon Ball Z, for example. There's one character in there who uses a sword whose name escapes me, but the sword isn't a separate thing that makes him stronger. It's an extension of the character, if you will.
I can't remember who that is actually anymore.
I don't know.
Oh,
it doesn't matter. I've not seen Dragon Ball Z for ages.
Yeah, me either.
But yeah, like I say, so in America, guns are tools which empower a common man to defend his liberties and go to war and tame the rugged wilderness and that kind of stuff. Whereas in Japan, the gun is an extension of the person which draws from the inner strength of the person. So the person is the power, whereas in America, the gun is the power.
Yeah. Going back to Dragon Ball Z for a second, their guns were their hands, usually. Like they would concentrate energy with their hands and then shoot it with their hands. And it's the same thing with what was that, Street Fighter? Was also, I believe, a Japanese-inspired game in the first place, I think. But though that was also all about powers that the characters just drew out of themselves and mustered out of just like magic, And
you can see it in things like Final Fantasy as well, where the characters will sometimes use weapons and even guns, but they're a part of the character. They're not really a separate thing they pick up. I
don't think Cloud ever changes his sword or anything like that, right? Like you said, you usually
I think so.
You usually just change their power levels. Like you give them more strength, you give them more dexterity, you give them more intelligence or something like that, and that is what affects their combat stats, like their damage output and everything. Whereas, here in America, with our obsession with first-person shooters and everything, the way you get better with your gun is either, like you said, get a better gun or upgrade the gun that you already have to make it more accurate, make it more quieter with a suppressor or something, put a different sight on it that makes it a lot easier to use the weapon, And it's not as much about upgrading the character, it's all about upgrading the weapon, the tool. It's a very, very interesting difference between the two cultures that I find extremely fascinating and in a lot of ways illuminating to our gun culture here in America. And I mean, if you even look at like Batman, Batman is one of those all-American heroes, right? His power, originally at the very least, was derived almost entirely from his gadgets, his tools of his trade, And even like Captain America, he was a little bit more of like a super soldier, but he still had his own tools at his disposal, that shield and other things over the years. I'm not sure what else he ever had, but I know he had the shield. That was the quintessential thing. He could just put up his shield and protect himself against anything. But it was still giving a lot more power to the tool and taking it away from the man. It's really, really interesting how that works in American culture, and it's so much different in other cultures.
Yeah, it is. And Japan has among the lowest gun-related homicides in the world. I know, like, from what I've been able to find, the most recent study or the most recent statistic on gun-related homicides in Japan happens to be in 2014, which shows that they only had 6 gun deaths that year, in comparison to America's 33,000. And let's just take stock of population as well. Japan has a population of 127, roughly a million people, and America has about a little
127 million people.
Yes.
All right.
And America has a little over 328 million people. So that's not like a tremendous difference in a disparity in terms of population size.
We're over double the size, but yeah.
That's true. Except, I mean, if you adjust it towards population, Japan is still very much at the bottom.
They
of
would be
list.
at 16, 16 gun deaths.
Right.
We would be. Oh God, I don't even know if we scaled our population down to them. Oh, I don't even know.
It'd be probably even worse. But yeah, Japan has very strict laws put in place for guns. So, for gun ownership. So, for example, you have to take an all-day class, which requires a written exam, and
that
also requires
taking a whole day for a class.
Right. To possess this deadly weapon. But and also they have to pass a shooting range test with a mark of at least 95%. And that's only just the beginning. Of course, they run a criminal background. They run a background on your relatives as in addition to your possible coworkers, or colleagues, which is very interesting.
That's interesting, definitely.
I mean, in the UK, you do need referees, so you need a couple of people to sign a thing saying you're legit. And those people have to be professionals, and they have to list their occupation and things. Which, they do the same thing for a background check anyway. But you go.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I never actually heard of that being,
you do. Whenever you get we have a DBS, something called a DBS check, disclosure and barring service, which is essentially an enhanced criminal record check. I only did it for certificates and teaching, where you need referees. You essentially need other people who are professionals and can't be related to you to sign a thing saying that you are trusted and trustworthy and such. And so for guns, it's to sign that you are competent and of sound mind and not likely to, use it for harm and misuse it and use it responsibly and this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
Which, if you think about it, for someone who would possibly use a gun irresponsibly, might have trouble getting someone to sign it, especially a professional.
That's very true. And also, that gun license, say you pass all those tests in Japan with flying colors. That gun license is only valid for 3 years. So at the end of that term, you have to do that whole process over again. And, and also, there's the whole thing on, how many people own guns. So, for every 100 people, only 0.6 Japanese people own guns, and sorry to be jumping around here, but one last thing that's very important is very interesting is creative, which is in order to buy a fresh round of cartridges, you have to have returned the one that you bought previously to the shop that you got it from. So,
So you have to return the empty. Oh, so you can never have too much ammo. That's interesting.
You can only have one magazine. Is that what you're saying? Or,
well, it says you can. It's in plural. It's plural. So I'm assuming that you can buy more than one cartridge. But maybe I'm sure in terms of they seem so strict here. I can't imagine that they would let up here. So I'm sure there are limits in terms of how many cartridges you're able to purchase at,
Yeah.
all at once or just in general. And yeah, within the 40 districts within Japan, each one of them are only allowed, only about 3 of, so they're only allowed to have no more than 3 gun shops within each district. So
Interesting.
So there's also that as well. Yeah.
Very, very interesting. So, I mean,
Yeah, it is.
yeah. I guess we should wrap it up at this point, because we're actually already over time. Jeez, this one actually flew by really fast. I thought it's felt like it's been a lot shorter than it was. One last thing that I wanted to look at was, like, when it comes to AR-15s and everything, I actually just watched a video earlier that was actually pretty disturbing to me. This guy stress tested an AR-15 to see how many rounds it could put out before the gun actually failed. And the results were disturbing to me, at the very least. Because, like, this is one thing that people have been, like, wondering, like, especially with the shooting that just happened. Supposedly, I think the guy that, the Vegas shooting, he had, like, 10 or more rifles in the apartment with him in the hotel room. And he was swapping them out for each other during his whole shooting spree. This guy used one AR-15 and was just trying to see how many rounds it could put out before the gun itself malfunctioned to the point where it would not be able to be used anymore. And I would say, I didn't get really a full count on how many magazines he went through, but he went through so many magazines, it's crazy. I wouldn't be surprised if the thing put out over 500 rounds. He used a couple drum round magazines that put out 50 shots each. There were a number of 30-round magazines that he used as well. And this is an AR-15 that you can buy as a civilian. This isn't a military-grade one. The military-grade ones might even be a little bit better quality than this. But I think he was saying it was mostly stock. And yet it put out... It seemed like it should have been easily over 500 rounds that he was able to just shoot in rapid succession. That, to me, is extremely worrying. So, because, like, the amount of shots that the shooter in Vegas put out, I'm not sure how many he put out, but, like, you can almost do what he did with one gun. That's worrying.
Yeah, that's pretty...
It is.
And one last stat really quick, though. Bump stocks allowed the Las Vegas gunmen to fire around 90 shots in 10 seconds.
My God.
Just to tell you the power of the bump stock and putting these assault rifles into full automatic mode. That is the cost of it. 90 shots in 10 seconds.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. And I just want to update your figure a little bit in terms of how many guns he had on him in Vegas or within his hotel room. That would be 23.
Okay.
Yeah, the police uncovered 23 guns in his hotel.
Yeah. So, yeah, he had a decent amount of these weapons. So, let's say he had enough ammo to last him forever. He could have easily, like, with that, the Meltdown video, he could have shot 500 rounds out of each and every one of those rifles. That would have been unbelievable. How much destruction he could have done by himself in that situation. We gotta do something about guns, guys. This is ridiculous. These bump stocks need to be regulated. I really hope that some regulation can get on board with that. There's so many other devices that people do use that can bring up the rate of fire to these weapons to being, automatic or nearly automatic. Like, you can put a Gatling gun-looking crank in there to make your weapon automatic or automatic-esque. And there are even hair triggers that you can buy that you don't even have to move your finger more than a millimeter to actually shoot the weapon. So if you get good at, like, just wiggling your finger on that trigger, you can shoot the thing automatically with some of these weapons. And that you can't have that. You can't have that with these high-capacity magazines that can hold over 50 rounds in them. That's just insane. But I guess with that, guys, I mean, not to steal the air out of the room or anything, guys. That's the end of the show. Thank you guys for showing up. Please like us on Facebook. Send us your comments on there even. If you really want to send us something, you can send us something through our Facebook at facebook.com/theevolutionofnow, or our email address at theevolutionofnow@gmail.com. And you can potentially, if you really want to, I mean, I'm not opposed to it, you can go onto our Patreon page and donate a couple dollars to us. I mean, like I said, I'm not opposed to it. Are you, what do you think about it, Jordan? Does that, like, worry you people, supporting us? I don't know.
I like money.
Great answer, Jordan. Big league. So, but, I mean, I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying, I mean, if you want to, it's out there. We really could use it, like, we enjoy doing this show, and we're probably going to be doing this show regardless if we ever get any money flowing through here. But, like, it would help. I would love to be able to do more in this capacity and bring more facts to you guys and be able to research more into these issues. And it's really tough, But, yeah, like, anyway, not to go on too long. So, you guys have a great, great night. Jordan, do you have any last words?
Too much pressure. I'm folding.
Sad. Very sad.
Just to reiterate what we said last time, if you care about these issues, make sure you contact your legislators and encourage them to vote and to legislate. To do something about the problem.
Absolutely.
True. You know what? I do have something to say.
And screw the Tories.
It's too late, Jordan. You already gave up your opportunity. Goodbye. All right. Go for it, Jordan.
Cut him off.
Don't pout.
Stop it. But even just like to piggyback off of that real quick, even drop some suggestions on how you believe we can better gun regulation in America. What?
I'm sorry, what were you saying, Jordan? I can't hear you. What are you saying?
Important. I actually have something important to say.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, man.
I'm sorry. I couldn't resist. I'm sorry.
It's okay. For all you international listeners out there.
That professionalism.
Right.
Big league. We have big professionalism here. You don't even know.
It's the good thing you can't see me rolling my eyes with my hands on my face, like, oh.
That's the magic of podcasts, But anyway, Jordan, go ahead. Go ahead with your point.
That's right.
Just as a note for the audience, the guys, they don't normally get this stupid until after the show. And all sense of professionalism just dissolves and it's like, oh, fuck.
God damn it.
Anyway.
All right, it's too late. I can't
go on, George.
No, Jordan,
you have the floor.
Okay.
I really can't.
You got time.
But no, I am really interested to hear the international audience out there, what you guys have in place that you think could work over here in terms of gun regulations. That would be really interesting.
Yeah. Definitely would like to hear your perspectives. I will say, guys, we actually have a one guy listening to the show from Kuwait. That's pretty interesting. That's really awesome. We have someone from Kuwait listening. We have people from the UK listening and even participating in the show. And some from Canada, apparently, too. So we are winning. We are winning big league, guys.
We
So,
have the biggest crowd sizes of any
The
internet
best.
radio show.
The best.
Internet podcast.
Right.
With the biggest crowd sizes. We're bigger than CNN.
Yeah. We're coming for you. We're coming for you, TYT. You're next. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for putting up with our BS. Anyway, goodbye. Have a great week.
Have fun.
Yeah, good riddance.